So everybody now is able to see my PPT slide. Okay, so we are taking the practical number 16 and 18, which was not actually completed because of your cultural activities, that is the gram-negative Coccobacilli and the bacillus. Okay, so these two topics, the practical points of this has to be covered. So now starting with this practical each, but before just I want to tell you that in these practical sessions there is nothing much to demonstrate you. At the end of this I am going to list of the spots which can be asked on these topics. Apart from that, you have to more about the theoretical ones than this practical point of view in these practicals. Okay, so now start with our practical. So that is the first is the practical number 16, that is gram-negative Coccobacilli. Under this heading, that your journal has covered 4 different bacteria, that is Yersinia, Brucella, Haemophilus and Bordetella. So each by each one we are going to see how these gram-negative Coccobacilli forms are there and how we can diagnose them and the clinical features of each. So starting with this Yersinia. So Yersinia is as know you is a gram-negative Coccobacilli bipolar staining, but it's an agent of plague, a fulminant systemic zoonosis. Okay, so transmitted from rodents by a arthropod vector, that is a rat flea. Yersinia pestis is gram-negative Coccobacilli form, and often it shows bipolar staining with methylene blue staining and other staining, and we are going to see what are the stainings are there. Then, and there may be a pleomorphism can be observed in some of the gram stainings from variable size and shapes, and they are non-motile and capsulated. So under this Yersinia we can going to see the 3 main species which are having to be a affection or infection to the humans, that is the Yersinia pestis causing plague, Yersinia pseudotuberculosis affecting primarily rodents, but some of the cases has been reported in human also, and Yersinia enteropolitica causing human diarrheal diseases. So this is a vector, this is a rat flea, which is the vector, as you know, this is a zoonotic disease. So this is the vector which is transmitting this disease from these rodents to the human beings. So now we are going to see the what is this urban cycle and sylvatic cycle. That means the transmission modes of this Yersinia pestis. So in the modes of transmission, most commonly there is a mode is the bite of an infected rat flea. So the rat flea is the main vector which is causing infections to the human beings. There are 2 types of cycles, sylvatic cycle and the urban cycle. Sylvatic means it is present in the animal areas and animal in the forest areas. So here the urban cycle is when human gets infected due to this urban cycle. So in the forest areas already this sylvatic cycle, there is flies and the rodents are there, are the cases there are the has been reported in the animals. So there is a every time there is an infection of this is happening in the forest, but when this wild rat comes in direct contact with the human life, that it comes to, that means someone coming from the village to a town, like that. So these rats when comes from the forest area to the town area where the people where they are living in the people saturated area, so there will the man get infection directly from the rodent, or the most commonly the infected flea. So infected flea which is present in the sylvatic cycle, that is causing a biting the human beings and causing the infection. So that is the direct mode of conveyance which is the most common. Then or the direct contact with the tissues and infected animals, so that is the second. Then third, the droplet inhalation. So that we have seen that these infected flea we bite it and causing the bubonic plague, that means the buboes, that means the larger lymph nodes. Okay, so then the secondary is causing into the pneumonia, and such pneumonic plague when they exhale or they were in the sputum of their or the coughing droplets, they carry this Yersinia in that sputum, and which will result into the person to person transmission, particularly in the pneumonic plague. Okay, so these are the commonest modes of the transmission. So in the exercise 1, if those who are having their journals with them, they can see that there is number 1 exercise in this Yersinia is the which samples will you collect from a suspected case of plague for its laboratory diagnosis. So again we must know what are the stages of this plague. So bubonic plague, clinical features of the plague, sorry. So bubonic plague, pneumonic plague or septicemic plague. Bubonic, as I told you, that is the lymph node enlargement. And what is the bubo means? Bubo means a regional lymph node which appear as tense tender swelling, which is known as a bubo. And where is the most common site? Most common site is the inguinal lymph nodes are the most common site, but it is also found in some axillary, cervical, submaxillary lymph nodes. Okay, so when such swelling comes with high grade fever and all things, so that is a typical picture of a classical bubonic plague. So in this plague, we have to take the aspirate from the buboes. In the pneumonic plague, there is a pneumonia has occurred, so there is a sputum, throat swab, or respiratory secretions can be taken for the as a sample. And third is the septicemic plague. Septicemic plague is generally the secondary to this bubonic or a pneumonic plague. So in that, the final stage of this plague is there infection encroach into the bloodstream. So where we can take a blood from antemortem patient. If the postmortem is suspected of plague, you have to take the splenic aspirate also can be taken for the specimen for the diagnosis of plague. So immediately we can do a methylene blue stain smear of Yersinia pestis. So this is what is this. It can be taken blood also, even in the tissues, the infected material of the rat or the carcasses of the rat, that can be taken, or the splenic puncture or the splenic tissue can be taken in the postmortem cases, and that the imprint smear has been prepared on the slide, which has been stained, and this staining will result in the particularly the bipolar staining. If you can see these bacilli, see these cocobacillary forms where the polar ends are showing a staining, where the central is not get dot bottom stain is unstained like that. So it typically looks like a safety pin appearance. Okay, so this is a safety pin appearance of Yersinia pestis on methylene blue staining. So here is the diagrammatic view. You have to draw this diagram in your journals. Okay, so the septicemic view, so gram staining will reveal you the, when you see that gram negative coccolith form, or in safety pin appearance in the methylene blue staining, or you will also get a Wesson stain can be used for staining such area. Okay, so this is the microscopic point of the Yersinia pestis. Exercise number 2 is which media are used to isolate the Yersinia pestis from pathological specimen. So next step of after getting an specimen, you have done the gram staining microscopy. The next step is to have to isolate it on some of the culture it on the media. So what are the culture media? So Yersinia pestis is aerobic and facultative anaerobic type of the organism, and the optimum temperature for its growth is unlike the most pathogen is 37 degrees Celsius, but it is 27 degrees Celsius. Okay, so it's better growth at 27 degrees Celsius. It also can grow at 37, but highly growth or can be seen at the 27 degrees Celsius. And what are the agars? There is nothing, various media has been used. The ordinary media also can be used for the isolation of such things. So that is the ordinary media is the enriched media like the blood agar. So blood agar, they can show dark brown non-hemolytic colonies. Okay, and McConkie also they grow which are non-fermenting colonies. Then some of the different agar like nutrient broth, which is a natural simple media, in that we added the oil or ghee into that one, which is going to float on that nutrient broth, and again the nutrient broth has inoculated with the colonies or the sample directly in this one. So where we can see after incubation there is a growth which is hanging down from the under of the surface. So in this picture you can easily see this is the layer of this oil or ghee. Under this down there is a growth which can seen as a hanging down from the under surface of the oil. So this is the known as the stalactile like growth. Okay, so in the ghee broth there is a typical feature of this Yersinia showing stalactile like growth. Here we can see and not see there is a even growth of the organism in total ghee broth. Okay, so that is the identification of this Yersinia pestis. Also some of the selective media can be used in a pneumonic plague. We can use a sputum where the all microflora is also there, normal microflora. In that case you need to have a selective media. So this is the Yersinia specific CIN agar, which is the used for there is the contents of the CIN, and this is the specific for some of the isolation of this thing. Then exercise number 3 is the which animals is used in the laboratory diagnosis of the plague. So your animals are used in lab diagnosis is the guinea pig and albino mice. We have already shown you some of the pictures of the albino mice and guinea pig. So this can be kept for your spot examination, where they can identify the organism and their clinical importance, or for which organism isolation you can use this. So whenever guinea pig or albino mice is there, you must add the Yersinia pestis isolation should be there on these animals. Exercise number 3 is the which serological tests are important in the lab diagnosis of the plague and what is their significance. So in that we'll see as such there is not much diagnostic point as per the serological examination is needed concerned in this plague, but there are found to be antibodies against the fraction 1 antigen which may be detected by a passive hemagglutination or complement fixation test. The antibodies appear at the end of first week, and as you know there is a limited diagnostic value, but it has a very much good identification of the plague foci. Okay, the plague foci has to be there. As you know, there communicable diseases are there, so there may be a foci. There is a some community is having the infection in their some part of the community, so that plague foci can be diagnosed or detected with the help of this antibodies against the fraction 1 antigen. Okay, because these rays remain positive even after several weeks of the recovery from the plague. So even they are present, if their antibodies are present, that means it's a highly source. Then the next, the gram-negative Coccobacilli is the Brucella. So when we move on to the Brucella, the brucellosis is the disease caused by the Brucella, and the brucellosis is also known as an undulant fever. It's a highly contagious febrile illness. Okay, it's a primarily zoonotic disease as per the Yersinia. It's also a zoonotic one and affecting various domestic animals such as sheep, goats and cattle. The human infection is usually associated with occupational or domestic exposure to the infected animals or their products. So that is the case common for every zoonotic disease, that when we come into contact with infected animals or their products, then we will going to human also get the infections. So the pathological pathogenic species of these are the Brucella melitensis, which is found to be associated with sheep and goat, Brucella abortus associated with cattle and buffaloes, and Brucella suis affecting mainly the pigs. So in exercise 1 of this practical Brucella, under which we can say first exercise is mention different methods of transmission of the Brucella. So in the transmission, it's usually transmitted from the infected animal to man, that we know. How they are affecting? So mainly the direct contact. The most common is the direct contact is the most common mode of transmission. By direct contact with the infected animal, their tissues as bloods, urines, vaginal discharge or placenta, with an abraded skin or of the mucosa of the male. So whenever our skin is abraded or mucosa abraded, we are infected with such infected parts of these animals, we get chance of having such infection. Then second is the foodborne. There is direct contact, and second is their byproduct. So byproducts by the ingestion of the raw milk or a dairy product. So in the goats and sheep, there are milk or slaughtering them and having eating their meat undercooked or something like that. So that will infected meat. So that will also cause a intestinal infection. Then products, the abortus, Bacillus abortus, mainly the placentas and the vaginal secretions or whatever it comes into contact with the human, that will lead to. Okay, and the other modes of chances of having infection is the airborne. Airborne is how? By inhalation of the dust or aerosol in the infected cowshed or slaughterhouses. So cowsheds also having their dust infected with such Brucella species, so the rare chance of having some infection by inhalation route, and also rarest chances of having, because some of the cases has been reported that laboratory accidents with the live cultures. Therefore, whenever Brucella is concerned, we are using using safety cabinets and all things to prevent the chances of having infection by man-made. Okay, so these are the routes of the infection. So that is the intestinal tract by drinking contaminated or unpasteurized raw milk, and direct contact with the, therefore the direct contact is mostly happening in the some of the special cases like in slaughtermen, farm workers, veterinary surgeons. They have the high chances of getting contact with such infected products. So therefore they are mainly the affected or the host. Number 2 of exercise, mention the most important sample collected for lab diagnosis of brucella. So as per the most important diagnosis for culture is the blood culture, that is in acute stage of brucellosis, which is highly positivity, highly sensitive, which we can get positive results by this blood culture. And in chronic cases you can use the lymph node aspirate or bone marrow biopsy is good for the chronic cases. It is also reported that urine, sputum, breast milk also can give a positive culture, but these blood culture, blood and the bone marrow are the mainstay of the diagnosis of the brucellosis. Now, what is the importance of the biphasic medium in the blood culture for brucellosis? That is the exercise number 3. You know always that we have learned this already. This is the Castaneda's method of blood culture system. Here we can see this is a biphasic blood culture system. Here we are having the slant as well as the broth. So what's the importance using in this? So by using this method, first you know, as this is a cap, it has a cap, sealed cap, and has a rubber stopper. So from that directly you can pierce this rubber stopper with your needle and syringe and directly inoculate blood in this broth. So there will be no contamination or no opening and all things and everything. So there is reduce the chances of contamination. Chances of contamination are low. Second, minimizes risk of infection to lab person. How? The lab person will get infected only when they have to open this cap and do some subculture thing, or see whether the brucella has grown in that broth or not. So that has to be checked by the lab person. So therefore we need to handle this bottle. So but what happened, due to this biphasic media, just tilting this bottle, the broth whichever is mixed with the blood is directly get subcultured over this agar slant. Okay, so subculturing manually if we are doing, if there is no agar slant, we have to introduce a loop from here, take one drop of this broth, and in the outside we have to do the subculture on the blood agar or McConkey agar plate. But here already slant is there, so we don't have to open it and do it. Just we have to incubate in upright position. After incubation of 2 days or 1 day, you can you can tilt this so that liquid get flow over this slant, and keep this in position for 10 minutes, and again after 10 minutes upright position, keep it in incubation. So ultimately what will happen, this is as good as doing a subculture outside the bottle. So it provides easy method of subculturing, so less chances of contamination also, and minimizing the risk for the infection, cause the infection in the laboratory persons also. So that is the importance of using this biphasic media. So this media is known as, this is the procedure known as Castaneda's blood culture for brucella. Now exercise number 3, they mention 2 serological tests for lab diagnosis of brucellosis. So direct agglutination and indirect agglutination tests are available in the market for doing the serological testing of this brucellosis. Then the next gram-negative Coccobacilli is the Haemophilus. Haemophilus means what? Haemophilus means, hemo means blood and philus means loving, that is the blood loving organism. That is the species. These Haemophilus species are oxidase positive, capsulated, pleomorphic gram-negative Coccobacillary forms. They require, most important, they require for their growth factors present in the blood. So special growth factors they require, which is present in the blood in the form of factor X and factor V. Okay, so the factor X and factor V is required for their growth, therefore, and which is presently in the mainly in the blood. So therefore the Haemophilus, the blood loving organisms. So these are the non-motile, small, 3 to 0.3 micron in size, and they are transmitted by the respiratory droplet when there is an infection to the pneumonia causing infection by Haemophilus influenza, or maybe direct contact with contaminated secretion, as in Haemophilus ducreyi, where the it is a sexually transmitted disease causing chancroid. So respiratory droplet or a direct contact with contaminated secretions. Okay. So number 1 exercise in this case is name the medically important species of Haemophilus and the lesions produced by them. So the species are the Haemophilus influenza, as I already told you, this causing meningitis, pneumonia, laryngoepiglottitis, otitis media and bronchitis. So upper respiratory, along with that the lower respiratory and meningitis. So these are the three clinical forms where the influenza will be infective. Then Haemophilus ducreyi is a sexually transmitted pathogen which is causing a chancroid or a soft chancre. So soft chancre is a lesion produced by it which is painful genital ulcerations, okay, and highly bleeding. If you touch it, there will be a continuous bleeding will start from that ulcers. Okay, so there is the classical example of the soft chancre. Then Haemophilus parainfluenza, which is also causing pneumonia and subacute bacterial endocarditis. Not only endocarditis but subacute bacterial, that is not present acutely. Okay. Then Haemophilus aprophyllus causing pneumonia, endocarditis, brain abscesses, and Haemophilus aegypticus, as you know as pink eye, which is causing a purulent conjunctivitis, is the lesion produced by this Haemophilus aegypticus. Now, the exercise number 2 is write down the lab diagnosis of meningitis caused by the Haemophilus influenza. So the meningitis, you may get a long question of the organisms causing, enlist the organisms causing meningitis, bacterial agents causing meningitis, and give lab diagnosis of H influenza in detail. So okay, so that may be your long question also. So as you know, meningitis, you have to take the sample. Best sample for it is the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so the cerebrospinal fluid is the first sample is to be collected with aseptic precautions. So immediately we can do two things. Immediately we can do gram stain and microscopy, and also we can do in this case a immunological test, which is a capsular polysaccharide antigen detection in the CSF. Okay, so this is just to be you have to be known that is this must be a in this case, in this infection, you can do such immunology immediately on the CSF sample also. So the capsular polysaccharide antigen can be detected with the help of latex particle agglutination method or counter immunoelectrophoresis. So this is a rapid and sensitive. So whenever you collected a sample, within 6 hours you can get a report of such agglutination test. So it's a very rapid and also a sensitive one. And the gram staining, the second important is this can be seen pleomorphic and gram negative long bacilli, even cocobacilliform. Here you can see a typical picture of this cocobacilli. Okay, it's not long like a typical bacilli, it's not correctly round shape like a cocci. So in between the bacilli and cocci, therefore it's called as cocobacilli. So there are many of these cocobacilli and these pus cells can be observed in this one. So this diagram you have to draw in your journals as well. And then culture, when we on to the culture, this can be grown also on the blood agar and chocolate agar. Yes, definitely it's a Haemophilus, that is a blood loving, you need to have a blood for the growth. Then incubation at 37 degrees Celsius in presence of 5 to 10% carbon dioxide. So that also to be noted. The blood agar particularly is not the regular blood agar which is heated to 80 to 90 degrees Celsius particularly, or boiled for a few minutes. So that will what will happen, the special growth factor which is required for its growth is the X and V factor. The particular V factor is released from the erythrocyte, which is good for the growth of this Haemophilus. And again the special medias are there. The Lewinthal's medium is also a clear transparent media is there, which is prepared by boiling and filtering mixture of blood with nutrient balls. So blood with nutrient mixed, and so there is a Lewenthal media. Here how the colonies will appear, they are capsulated cell are there, so they will show distinction iridans. So there is the shining colonies like that. So iridans can be seen on the Lewinthal's agar. And another is the Field's agar, which can be used also for the isolation of this Haemophilus by adding peptic digest of the blood to the nutrient. Rather than adding directly blood, it will create some turbidity like opaque agar. So that is the peptic digest added from the of the blood and directly nutrient. So the agar will be a somewhat transparent one. Okay. The most important of this diagnosis is the satellitism. This is also important. It is several times asked as a short note also. So just go in from the book details of the satellitism. Okay. So this is a satellitism means what? When the Staphylococcus aureus is streaked across a blood plate perpendicular to the H influenza streak line. So what will happen? Suppose this is in this diagram you can see there is a central black line which is nothing but it's a Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, so this is a Staphylococcus aureus streaked on a blood agar and perpendicular to the H influenza streak line. So these are the two lines of the H influenza which has been streaked, and this is centrally perpendicular to that two lines there is a Staphylococcus aureus. So what will happen to this? So there is a factor V which is released from Staph aureus. So the factor V is released along this black line. So whenever in that area the factor V is abundant in this area, while you go away from this central line there is a factor V is scanty. So factor V is whenever there is high in concentrated along this area. So the colonies which are perpendicularly drawn from H influenza, they will grow bigger or the larger in size because of more nutrients are available in that area. Okay, here they grow, but there is a scanty V factor, the scanty growth media is there. So there is a small colonies are seen. So this looks like a satellitism. Okay, so this looks like a satellitism. So this is a satellitism. So here you can see this is a one method of doing streaking this Staph aureus perpendicular to the H influenza, or you can directly in this picture you can see they have a lawn culture of H influenza all over the plate, lawn culture of H influenza all over the plate, and centrally they have streaked the Staphylococcus aureus. So after growth what will happen, there is this Staphylococcus release V factor around this because of hemolysis. Staph hemolysis, Staphylococcus aureus is causing a beta hemolysis, okay, as you know. So this causes the degradation of the RBCs and there is release of V factor around this area. Therefore you can see a visible growth of the H influenza in this just adjacent to the Staph aureus streak area. In the periphery you will see no growth. So this is the satellitism test important for the diagnosis of Haemophilus influenza. Now the next gram-negative Coccobacilli is the Bordetella. The Bordetella, what do you know? You know the Bordetella pertussis is the main causative organism of the whooping cough in the children. Whooping cough is a highly contagious, vaccine preventable bacterial disease. So that 2 points: highly contagious and vaccine preventable. Okay, which is characterized by paroxysmal cough ending in a high-pitched inspiratory sound described as whoop. Therefore, it is called as a whooping cough. Okay, so very contagious and can be prevented by the vaccines also. So there are the three species which are there: the Bordetella parapertussis, Bordetella bronchoseptica, Bordetella avium. Apart from this, Bordetella pertussis. Exercise number 1 in that, write in brief the lab diagnosis of the whooping cough. So the lab diagnosis starts from the sample collection. The secretions from the postnasal or pharyngeal wall are collected in a cotton swab on a bent wire passed from the nasal cavity or oral cavity. Okay, so this is the way that we have to need a secretion from posterior pharyngeal, from this area. We need secretion. We don't want this anterior nasal swab or any throat swab or like this. We need a posterior pharyngeal swabs or secretions. So that is by this method, or there is a west postnasal swab. In that, this stick is not that hard, it's a flexible one, so that it can easily go without causing any injury to the local area, and we can collect the secretions from this posterior nasal swab, posterior compartment. Okay, so that is the pharyngeal posterior wall, which is important site for the sample collection. And another method of this is the cuff plate method, which is helpful in the bedside investigation also. So what is important? As a Bordetella causing a cough, mainly predominantly cough, so we'll provide a selective media or even a blood agar to the patient. So whenever patient has cough, he have to open this plate, and this open plate has to keep in front of his mouth at least 10 to 15 centimeter away from the mouth, and when he get a cough, he will spread such droplet nuclei, and which droplet nuclei directly fall into that agar plate. Okay, on this agar, and then this agar is closed and sent immediately to the laboratory for further incubation. So apart from taking directly swabs and doing the culture on this one, you are given this directly plate to the patient to cuff it just on the plate, and this droplet will be taken for the culture. So this is the bedside investigation cuff plate method. Easily we can do it. Then culturing, doing it, we can use a blood agar or special media like Borget, Gingu, glycerin potato agar or charcoal blood agar. Here they grow 35 to 37 degrees Celsius, as other bacteria also grow at same temperature. They grow takes longer. Okay, so you have to incubate it for a longer period, up to 2 to 3 days. So you have to see it after 2 to 3 days. So there will, then you can see some of the colonies are like that. These are dissected pearly or mercury drops. Okay, single colony, you can see a shining single colony which has a slightly opaque grayish type of. So these are the looking like a mercury drop. When there is a confluent growth, it will look like a aluminum paint appearance. Okay, when is a confluent growth is there, you cannot see a single drop, then it looks like a aluminum paint appearance. So this is the two important terminologies to be considered. In the serological point of view, it is useful only in the retrospective diagnosis, as there is no any specific test for the diagnostic point of view. So rise in only antibody titer we can see in a paired samples, which has been, that is the two samples taken 7 to 15 days apart. So there is a rise in antibody by demonstrated by the agglutination reactions, gel precipitation or complement fixation test. Nowadays there is a demonstration of specific secretory IgA antibody. Okay, secretory antibody can present in your pharyngeal wall. So that is specific secretory pharyngeal antibody can be seen in the nasopharyngeal secretions by the ELISA, which can be a diagnostic method in the culture negative cases. Okay, so this is now they has a serological importance. Exercise number 2, mention the prophylaxis of whooping cough, which is most important, as you know may have definitely one of your every student have one vaccine in on this spot. So in that DPT is the most important. We will have a DPT, 50% will definitely get a DPT as a spot, their spot examination. So DPT is a diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus. This is a triple vaccine, you know. But diphtheria and tetanus is a toxoid form, where the Bordetella is the whole cell Bordetella. Okay, the whole cell Bordetella are there, which is a smooth strain, smooth phase 1 strain. Okay, and then it is administered in the combination with the diphtheria and tetanus toxoid. So 3 doses has to be given at 4 to 6 weeks of interval. That is a 1.5 months of age, 2.5 months of age, and 3.5 months of age, 4, 6 and 8 weeks of duration. And then 2 boosters have been given, first at 1.5 year of age and second at the 5 year of age. So this is the prophylaxis schedule of this DPT vaccine. And but this vaccine has been shown some of time they show post vaccination encephalopathy or neurotic complication. Then you have to stop the further vaccination schedule, and do not vaccinate after 7 years of age with this DPT vaccine, which is a whole cell vaccine. So in such cases, what you can do, go for a cellular vaccine. It is not a whole cell, but it's a cellular. So it's whole cellular containing protective components of pertussis bacilli. Okay, so these protective components can be taken. It's not the whole cell, but only the components has been taken from the cell. So therefore it's a comparatively less complications can be seen in such cases. And the non-immunized cases, when they come in directly contact with the active case, so they have to be given chemoprophylaxis in the form of erythromycin for the 10 days. So this is the vaccination and the prophylaxis of this pertussis. Now the practical number 18, which is a bacillus. It's the last practical of today's practical session. So these 4 organisms which have been seen, that is all showing a common feature. There is a commonly the gram-negative Coccobacillary form. Okay, so in this bacillus, we know the bacillus is a gram-positive bacilli. Okay, so we have to know what are the gram-positive bacilli. You have to enumerate them, and also gram-positive bacilli which are spore-bearing. So this is the bacillus species which is the spore-bearing one. Okay, so that has to be noted. These bacillus species like Bacillus anthracis, Bacillus cereus, these are present normally in the soil, water, air and dust. Okay, so these are the commonly present in the dust and this. So they are frequently isolated as the contaminants in the bacteriological culture media. Okay, so whenever contamination happening, air also there are dust coming and settling on the blood agar, we will found that contamination of this bacillus species. Okay, so the clinical presentation may cause Bacillus anthrax, particularly we are talking about is causing a cutaneous anthrax, which is known as Hyde-Fortis disease. pulmonary anthrax, known as wool sorter's disease, and even called as intestinal anthrax. Why the anthrax the term has been given? Because in these cases we have seen that a black issue, okay, a blackish issue, which is a black necrotic part of the vesicle. So that black issue is termed as the anthrax. Therefore, the name is given as a anthrax. So exercise number 1 in this one is what is the source of infection for human anthrax. So human anthrax, also known as a zoonotic diseases. So as we can see, these all what we have seen today are the most of them are the zoonotic diseases. So there may be a long question, enumerate the zoonotic diseases, and then some of the bacillus or anthrax or brucella has to be given in lab diagnosis, and all details to be there. So that will make a list of which zoonotic diseases also. So anthrax is a zoonotic disease, primarily diseases of the sheep, cattle and goats. Then common in veterinary surgeons, butchers, shepherds, farmers and workers in the wool and hide industry, because they comes in contact with such infected animals. So in by how they are transmitted, so heat resistant spores are already present in the soils. They may directly inhaled by this human, causing inhalation, contamination of dust. So that is a wool sorter's disease, pulmonary anthrax coming there. And the primarily these animals which are present, they graze on these fields, which is having the heat resistance spores. Also they can sit here on the floor, so therefore they get high chances of getting spores on their hairs and the wool. So by these two methods these animals get infection. So when they graze on these fields and engulf the spores of this one, they may get ultimately contaminated the vegetations and ultimately death. But up to reaching the death, meanwhile there may be contact animal products like wool, hairs can be in the wool factory and such things, or ingestion of the contaminated food products, or ingestion of this contaminated food products, that is the animal products. So therefore the by three methods there will be a chances of infection to the human being. Number 2 exercise, enumerate various lesions produced by the bacillus anthracis in the human beings. So the clinical lesions which can be produced is the cutaneous anthrax. Due to the handling of such infected animals, or their wool or their hairs or the bristles, they may get a cutaneous anthrax, which is the most common case infection. So which is the known as that particular picture you have seen already, na? So that picture will known as a malignant pustule. There is a black issue around where the vesicles has been formed. So there is a malignant picture is the present only the handling area like a face, neck, back and hands. Pulmonary anthrax, hemorrhagic bronchopneumonia due to inhalation. Then intestinal due to ingestion, there may be a hemorrhagic enteritis. And these all three forms can, in chronic cases, then land up directly into the septicemia. This is a complication of the all three anthrax phases. Mention in brief lab diagnosis of the human anthrax. So we are considering the human anthrax. When we are considering the human anthrax, we have to know in which cutaneous, whether it's a cutaneous anthrax, it's a pulmonary anthrax or a septicemia anthrax. So in that case, we have to take a particular sample like pus, tissues, sputum or blood. Then first thing what we are going to do, perform the gram stain. So we can see a gram positive rods or gram variable also sometimes. Okay, so these are the particular gram positive rods can be seen. They are non-acid fast and aerobic bacilli forming heat resistant spores. Okay, then also these, if you see, the spores will not get stained in the gram staining, so there is a vacuole formation in that one. Endospores are there. So this is the characteristic squared cell with the central endospore which is not get stained. So this looks like a typical bamboo stick appearance. So this bamboo stick appearance is the particularly nature which can be observed, characterized by this species. Okay, so bacillus will show such bamboo stick appearance in the gram staining with central unstained area which is nothing but a spore. So in doing the culturing, it can be very well grown on the blood culture at a normal culture, ordinary media, and at 37 to 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. Sheep blood agar on like this, they will show a gray-white irregular type of colony, bigger than the Staph aureus, 2 to 3 millimeter in diameter, raised, dull, opaque, grayish-white. You can see easily as it's a contaminant. Okay, and then it show ultimately a frosted glass appearance. Frosted glass, like a shiny appearance of it can be seen, and tenacious and rough. That means if you try to pick up that one, it will not get easily picked up. So there is a rough or tenacious type of growth can be seen on the blood agar. And ultimately, again, you can observe with the hand lens, you can see the edge of the colony is composed of long interlacing chains of the bacilli, resembling locks of matted hair. Okay, so if you see the edge of the colony, you can see like a matted hair has been locked here. So these are the nothing but a long chains of the bacilli itself. So this particularly feature is known as the Medusa head colony. Okay, so the Medusa head colony appearance of the on blood agar is the characteristics of this bacillus. Okay, and on solid media containing penicillin in that, it may bacillus anthracis may be grown and with chains in the circular chains. So it is known as a string of pearl reaction in a particular that for the bacillus. Selective media is the PLET media, the plate media, or polymyxin, lysozyme, EDTA and thallus acetate added into the heart infusion agar. So that is a PLET selective media for the bacillus isolation. The next culture will be a gelatin stab culture. So this is a gelatin agar which is present in the tube, and we have to stab it with the straight loop with the help of this growth. And after incubation, you can see inverted fir tree appearance. You can see this tree is there which is inverted. So this is how it looks. Similarly, you can see the growth is like that. That is the inverted fir tree appearance in the gelatin stab culture. And important again, the McFadden reaction, that is the capsular staining. But this is not done in the human diagnosis. We can do this in presumptive diagnosis of anthrax in animal. So how we can do this in the animals? When the blood films containing the anthrax bacilli are stained with polychromethylene blue. Okay, so the anthrax is present in the tissues of the animals, so that has to be taken. The blood films has been prepared from that tissue, and then we have to see for stain with this polychromethylene blue. And when we see under the microscope, you can see easily a amorphous material is there surrounding this particular bacilli. You can see here the amorphous material is present surrounding the bacilli. This is nothing but a capsule. So this is a McFadden reaction or capsular staining. This picture also you have to draw in your journals. Okay, so finally to sum up, the lab diagnosis, you have to take a sample like swab, pus, fluid, sputum according to the infection, do the gram stain, then McFadden reaction can be seen in the animals tissues, culture do in the Medusa head colonies on the agars, and gelatin stab culture also diagnostic one. Animal inoculation, yes, can be done, but now it's not we are doing it routinely nowadays. But mouse is the organism used for, mouse is the animal used for this organism growth. And then serological test. Serological test is the Ascoli's thermoprecipitation test. Okay, so what is this Ascoli's thermoprecipitation test? So there is a first exercise which is the what is the Ascoli's thermoprecipitation? It's a ring precipitation test. Here it's done when the sample is received in the putrid form. Okay, and the bacilli are likely to be a non-viable. So in such cases, because viable bacilli we can grow, but if you think that found to be a carcasses of some of the animal and the bacilli also may die, the chances of getting non-viable bacilli. So in such cases, the sample tissue samples are grounded in saline, boiled and filtered. Okay, then what is the purpose of doing so? By taking the antigens from that. Okay, so this antigenic extract now which we have recovered is layered over the anthrax antiserum on a narrow capillary tube. So such narrow capillary tube has been taken. In that, the antigenic extract is the upper part which has been layered over the antiserum, anthrax antiserum. So there are antiserum has the antibodies and upper part is having antigen, soluble antigen of this one. So there is a zone of equivalence, so the antigen antibody reacts here because of their zone of equivalence. That is the same quantity of the antigen and antibody are present in this zone. Here antigen excess, here antibody excess, but during this zone they are equivalent in the number, so there is a ring formation in that area. So this is known as a ring precipitation. This test is known as a Ascoli's thermoprecipitation test. Now last is the exercise number 5, mention in brief the prophylaxis of anthrax. So the prophylaxis, how do we prevent it? By controlling an animal, annual vaccination to the animals, then disposal of animal carcasses, disinfected with them oil, or burn them, or bury deep burial, along with it covered with the quicklime. So there is no transmission of such bacillus. Then industrial protection, use gloves, masks in the wool factories. Okay, so therefore then disinfection of the material prior to the handling, so that is also important. And destruction of the spores in animals imported into an non-endemic country. So where the reports have been not there, the non-endemic countries, that whenever say in such countries we are exporting some of the animal products like wools, hairs and all things, so they has to be deactivated or destructed the spores. This destruction of the spores in such cases is known as the duckling. Okay, the duckering. So the item, if the wool is there, the formaldehyde is used for such destruction of the spores, but the concentration changes upon what item you are going to disinfect. So wool, then 2%, temperature 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, and contact time is for 20 minutes. So this way you can disinfect or destruction of the spore is done in such animal products, and then this product has to be exported into the non-endemic countries. Okay, so and last is the vaccination, whether it is not done in the every cases. The only at-risk groups are the veterinarians, lab workers, livestock handlers and military personnel. They need to be vaccinated with this, otherwise no regular vaccination is advised in the healthy person. So this is the end of today's practical number 16 and 18, that is the bacillus and the gram-negative cocobacilli. So in this practical, this is more of the theoretical one, but still you can have some of the spots like rat flea specimen we have. When you come back, we are going to show the rat flea specimen, then gram staining of the gram-negative cocobacillary forms, and also gram stain of the Bacillus anthracis, which is bamboo stick appearance. Then so DPT vaccine can be kept for your spots, and then again animal, that is the guinea pig and the albino mice. Okay, so this is all for today topic. So we are planning a next lecture on the Tuesday. We'll note you and notify you on the WhatsApp group, and also the writing material we will provide in 2 days on the WhatsApp group. So complete your journals, those who have the journals with them, and then come. Okay, thank you.